Germany's most feared pocket battleship was scuttled by its own crew in December 1939. A crowd of 20,000 people watched it burn from the shore. It is still there. The Admiral Graf Spee has been sitting in the mouth of the River Plate, 7 kilometers outside Montevideo, for 85 years, only 11 meters down. It is shallow enough that parts of it were visible above the waterline for years. A salvage operation started in 2004 but was never finished. A Nazi eagle pulled off the stern in 2006 has been locked in a sealed wooden crate in a naval warehouse ever since, because nobody can agree on what to do with it. Most people know the Graf Spee was scuttled, but what actually happened in those 72 hours in Montevideo? And why, decades later, is the wreck still sitting in a South American river with no plan to remove it? The answers involve a brilliant British bluff and a Nazi artifact that 3 governments are still arguing over today: the pocket battleship illusion. The British called it a pocket battleship, a term born partly out of mockery and partly out of genuine unease. Germany built the Graf Spee under the strict constraints of the Treaty of Versailles, which limited German warship displacement to 10,000 tons. While the Graf Spee was officially declared to be within that 10,000-ton limit, at full load, it actually displaced 16,000 tons. Germany had been quietly lying about the numbers from the very start. Specifications of a Predator. Remarkably, during this campaign, not a single merchant sailor died. The ship's captain, Hans Langsdorff, strictly followed international prize rules. When the Graf Spee stopped a ship, the crew was safely evacuated first. Over 3 months, the Graf Spee successfully sank 9 vessels, totaling 50,000 tons of shipping. In response, Britain deployed a massive hunting force consisting of 4 aircraft carriers, 2 battleships, a battle cruiser, and 16 cruisers to locate it. Yet, none of them did. Then, in early December, Langsdorff headed for the River Plate between Uruguay and Argentina, one of the busiest shipping lanes in the South Atlantic. Commodore Henry Harwood of the Royal Navy made the exact same calculation. He positioned his force of 3 cruisers, the HMS Exeter with 8-inch guns, HMS Ajax, and the New Zealand ship HMS Achilles, both with 6-inch guns, at the mouth of the River Plate, and waited. Length, 610 feet. Armament, 6 11-inch guns, a heavier armament than any cruiser afloat at the time. Range, powered by diesel engines, it had a range of over 16,000 nautical miles, allowing it to reach any ocean in the world and stay there for months without resupply. The design philosophy was simple: outrun anything it could not outgun, and outgun anything it could not outrun. In theory, nothing in the British cruiser fleet could touch it. The hunting ground and the Battle of the River Plate. In August 1939, 2 weeks before war was officially declared, the Graf Spee slipped out of Wilhelmshaven and headed south. Its mission was to hunt British merchant shipping and sink the supply lines keeping Britain alive. A devastating fight and a crucial hit. The Graf Spee, armed with superior 11-inch guns, should not have lost this fight. Knowing this, Harwood split his forces. Exeter attacked from one direction, while Ajax and Achilles closed in from another, ensuring the Graf Spee could not point all its main guns at both threats simultaneously. The Graf Spee's heavy shells devastated the Exeter, destroying both forward turrets, wrecking its bridge, and forcing it out of the battle to limp south while trailing thick smoke. However, the German pocket battleship had also taken dozens of hits. The toll on the Graf Spee: 36 crew members were killed and 60 were wounded. Critically, the ship's fuel purification system, the vital equipment that cleaned the diesel oil before it reached the engines, was severely damaged. Without a functioning purification system, the Graf Spee's legendary range was completely gone. Langsdorff was forced to make for the nearest neutral port, Montevideo, Uruguay. The 72-hour ultimatum and the British bluff. Under the Hague Convention, a belligerent warship in a neutral port is only permitted 72 hours for emergency repairs. After that deadline, the ship must be interned for the remainder of the war. Langsdorff needed weeks, not hours, to make his ship seaworthy. He cabled Berlin for instructions, but the High Command gave a strict order: no internment. Meanwhile, British diplomats in Montevideo began masterfully spreading a false narrative. They leaked rumors that a massive British naval force was gathering just outside the harbor, claiming that the battlecruiser HMS Renown and the aircraft carrier HMS Ark Royal had arrived. They warned that anyone leaving the harbor would be sailing straight into a fatal trap. None of it was true. The Renown and Ark Royal were actually more than 2 days away at full speed. Outside the harbor, the British had almost nothing left, only the battered Ajax, Achilles, and a third cruiser en route from the Falklands. However, Langsdorff's intelligence sources seemingly confirmed the rumors. His own gunnery officer even reported sighting the distant silhouettes of large capital warships on the horizon. They were completely mistaken. The ships were never there. Believing he was utterly surrounded, Langsdorff cabled Berlin one final time, stating there was no prospect of breaking out. Berlin replied with a grim authorization: scuttle if necessary. The scuttling and Langsdorff's tragic end. On December 17, 1939, at 8:55 in the evening, as a crowd of 20,000 spectators watched from the Uruguayan shore, the Graf Spee slowly moved out of the harbor. Only Captain Langsdorff and a skeleton crew of 40 men remained aboard to set the explosive demolition charges. Once the fuses were lit, the remaining crew members were safely taken off by an Argentine tugboat. The Graf Spee erupted in flames and settled heavily into the shallow mud of the River Plate, ending its active service after just 3 months and 27 days. 3 days later, in a hotel room in Buenos Aires, Argentina, Hans Langsdorff wrapped himself in an Imperial German naval flag, choosing the old imperial colors over the Nazi swastika flag, and shot himself. He left behind a final, poignant letter. A captain cannot separate his own fate from that of his ship. The secret intelligence race. What most history books omit is that within weeks of the scuttling, a Montevideo engineering company purchased the salvage rights to the Graf Spee from the German government for £14,000. While the British Admiralty publicly complained that the price was too high, the entire operation was actually a covert front. British intelligence had secretly bought the wreck. The British were highly surprised by the uncanny accuracy of the German gunnery during the battle, and strongly suspected it was driven by radar-assisted targeting. They were correct. British engineers quickly dismantled the Graf Spee's advanced radar rangefinder and shipped their findings back home. This highly classified operation was overseen in part by a young Cambridge scientist named Fred Hoyle, who would later become one of the 20th century's most famous astrophysicists, working on radar countermeasures. That £14,000 investment bought Great Britain a massive, crucial head start in the development of naval radar technology. The 21st century salvage and the Nazi Eagle dispute. The ship's hull was partially broken up for scrap metal during 1942 and 1943, but the remaining bulk was left sitting 11 meters down. Over the decades, thick river sediment built up around the hull, the heavy superstructure subsided, and eventually, only the very tip of a mast remained visible above the water. In 2004, a private salvage team attempted to raise the historic wreck piece by piece. In February of that year, they successfully lifted the massive 27-ton optical rangefinder from the muddy riverbed, the exact same device British intelligence had covertly studied over 60 years prior. However, funding soon dried up, intense legal disputes erupted, and the salvage project permanently stalled. In 2006, divers recovered a highly controversial artifact from the Graf Spee's stern, a massive bronze Nazi eagle. Dimensions: 2 meters tall, 3 meters wide. Weight: 350 kilograms. Key feature: clutching a large swastika in its talons. The eagle was immediately moved into a sealed wooden crate inside a Uruguayan naval warehouse, igniting nearly 2 decades of bitter international arguments. Germany claimed official ownership of the sovereign military property. Jewish advocacy groups strongly demanded that the swastika be permanently covered or kept out of public circulation to prevent it from becoming a neo-Nazi relic. Meanwhile, the salvage company sued the Uruguayan government for a share of its potential value. Uruguayan courts initially ordered the artifact to be auctioned off, but subsequent legal appeals reversed the decision. Eventually, the The Supreme Court of Uruguay granted full legal custody of the Eagle to the state government. In June 2023, the president of Uruguay announced a plan to melt the historical bronze eagle down and recast it into a dove representing peace. However, following a fierce public backlash over destroying historical artifacts, the president canceled the plan the very next day. The eagle remains trapped in its crate. Why the wreck remains in the mud? Today, the Admiral Graf Spee remains exactly where it settled. At just 11 meters deep, its abandonment is not an engineering or depth problem. The barriers are entirely legal, financial, and diplomatic. Sovereignty disputes. Uruguay passed a law in 1973 claiming state ownership of all historical shipwrecks within its territorial waters, a claim that Germany historically disputed. Financial risk. Executing a full recovery of the buried ship would cost tens of millions of dollars, with no clear financial avenue to recoup those massive costs. Current status. The remaining wreck currently sits in a busy commercial shipping channel, its hazardous location marked permanently by a warning buoy. While a single gun recovered in 1997 stands outside the National Maritime Museum, and its anchor forms part of a memorial in Montevideo, the rest of the ship remains lost to the river mud. And inside a tightly sealed wooden crate in a naval warehouse, the 350-kilogram bronze eagle sits silently, waiting for someone to finally decide its ultimate fate. A legendary German battleship, undone by a clever British bluff that never actually existed, remains trapped in the mud, lying just 7 kilometers outside Montevideo, 11 meters down, with no plans for removal.